Where did 4.2 billion euros go? That was the question hanging in the air inside the European Parliament chamber in Strasbourg when a routine budget debate turned into a political earthquake. What unfolded that morning was not scheduled, not previewed, and certainly not welcomed by the carefully managed machinery of Brussels. On the official agenda, it was a procedural session on the 2026 budgetary framework, the kind of meeting that rarely breaks beyond policy circles. Speeches would be delivered, amendments proposed, votes recorded. By evening, the headlines would move on. But this time, they didn't. At the center of the storm stood Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission and arguably the most powerful executive figure in the European Union. For years, she had commanded the institutional weight of the Commission through crises: Brexit aftershocks, pandemic recovery funds, energy shocks, and war on the EU's eastern border. She was known for composure, message discipline, and an unshakable command of the podium. Opposite her that day was Viktor Orbán, Hungary's prime minister and one of the most polarizing leaders in Europe. Representing the Hungarian presidency of the Council, Orbán entered the chamber without theatrics, no raised voice, no grand gestures, just a thick black binder placed deliberately on the podium. The title on its cover was stark: Shadow Budget. From that moment, the atmosphere changed. The allegation. Orbán did not frame his intervention as political rhetoric. He cited Article 325 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, the provision dealing with fraud against the Union's financial interests. He spoke not about ideology or sovereignty, but about numbers, about transactions, about documentation. The allegation was precise: 4.2 billion euros allocated to the Emergency Energy Transition Fund, funds publicly earmarked to support infrastructure modernization across Eastern Europe, had not reached their intended destinations. Countries such as Poland and Hungary had been publicly identified as beneficiaries under the Green Transition Framework. The money had been approved, the allocations had been announced, press releases had been issued. But according to documents Orbán presented, the transfer trail told a different story. A coded wire transaction labeled EUX 99 Lux pointed not toward Warsaw or Budapest, but toward Luxembourg, specifically to a subsidiary of an international consultancy structure reportedly incorporated in Delaware in the United States, with operational registration inside Luxembourg's financial architecture. The structure raised eyebrows immediately. Delaware incorporation is known for legal opacity. Luxembourg provides proximity to EU financial systems while allowing corporate layering that can complicate oversight. The combination, Orbán implied, was not accidental. Then came the most explosive element. The consultancy named in the dossier, Green Strat Global, allegedly listed on its advisory board an individual described as having direct personal ties to von der Leyen's family. Orbán did not shout the accusation. He did not need to. The implication carried itself. If true, it would mean that billions in EU taxpayer funds had been routed through a green subsidy framework into an entity linked, even indirectly, to the family of the Commission president overseeing the program. The chamber did not erupt. It went silent. The silence. In politics, noise often signals surprise. Silence signals recognition. Members of Parliament who had defended Commission integrity for years sat motionless. Several were seen reviewing documents on their devices. No immediate rebuttal came from allied benches, no procedural interruption, no swift denunciation of forged evidence. When invited to respond, von der Leyen arose. Cameras captured trembling hands. Her opening remarks referenced procedural irregularities and mischaracterization, but her voice lacked its usual authority. She paused mid-sentence. The legal implications were clear. A categorical denial could carry consequences if documentation proved otherwise. An admission would be devastating. There appeared to be no safe middle ground. After a brief exchange with her chief of staff, she gathered her papers and stepped away from the podium, leaving a live microphone capturing the sound of shuffled documents and hushed words. Chants of resign emerged from opposition benches. Orbán remained seated. Within an hour, financial markets reacted. The euro dropped sharply against the dollar. Currency markets are not swayed by parliamentary theatrics. They respond to institutional risk. And for the first time in years, Brussels appeared institutionally vulnerable. Institutional shockwaves. The European Public Prosecutor's Office, led by Laura Kövesi, was reported to have received a copy of the dossier. Legal experts noted that if a formal preliminary inquiry were opened, the question of presidential immunity could enter uncharted territory. Meanwhile, national capitals moved cautiously. In Berlin, Paris, and Rome, opposition parties demanded clarity from their own governments. Finance ministries were asked whether they had visibility into the transfer trail cited in Strasbourg. Statements from senior officials avoided personal endorsements of von der Leyen, focusing instead on confidence in due process. Press briefings at the Commission were cancelled, scheduled media appearances postponed. The Berlaymont building, headquarters of the Commission, entered what insiders described as containment mode. Outside official channels, the footage of the walkouts spread rapidly across social platforms. Frame-by-frame analyses circulated online. Commentators debated whether the silence signaled guilt, caution, or strategic retreat. The central question persisted: where did 4.2 billion euros go? Beyond the numbers. Money of that magnitude doesn't vanish casually. Large-scale EU disbursements are typically layered with auditing mechanisms, multi-stage approvals, and cross-institutional reporting requirements. Any irregularity at that scale would require either systemic failure or deliberate circumvention. Orbán further claimed possession of 15 terabytes of encrypted material from an alleged whistleblower within the Commission. He suggested that beyond the energy fund transfer, additional documentation involved undisclosed negotiations and unapproved contracts. Those claims remain unverified, but the political damage had already been done. The European project rests heavily on the perception of technocratic integrity, that its institutions, though complex, operate under transparent rules. Even the suggestion that oversight could be compromised at the highest level strikes at the foundation of that legitimacy. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Civil society organizations demanded forensic audits of emergency funds approved since 2022. Anti-corruption watchdogs issued open letters urging full disclosure of transaction chains. Parliamentary factions across ideological lines called for transparency. For years, critics of Brussels have argued that institutional opacity shields decision-making from public accountability. Supporters have countered that multi-layered governance ensures stability. The Strasbourg confrontation placed those narratives into direct conflict. The political stakes. If formal investigations proceed, the implications would be unprecedented. No sitting commission president has faced criminal-level scrutiny while in office. The College of Commissioners could face operational paralysis. Legislative timetables, from climate initiatives to defense coordination, could stall. The Green Deal, Ukraine aid packages, energy transition frameworks, all would be affected by institutional uncertainty. Yet it is equally possible that investigations conclude without substantiating wrongdoing. Allegations do not equate to proof. Dossiers require verification. Financial trails must be independently audited. In high-stakes political confrontations, documents can be selectively framed, context omitted, interpretations disputed. What made this episode different was not only the claim itself, but the visual moment of departure. The image of the Commission president leaving a live microphone amid unanswered questions. Politics is shaped as much by perception as by paperwork. The broader reckoning. The European Union has weathered crises before: sovereign debt emergencies, migration surges, geopolitical shocks. In each case, Institutional resilience depended on public trust that systems of oversight functioned. Now that trust faces a test. The machinery of accountability, from the public prosecutor's office to national audit bodies, must determine whether the alleged transaction reflects administrative complexity, procedural error, or something more serious. Markets will watch, member states will calculate, political opponents will mobilize, allies will measure their distance carefully, and citizens will ask a straightforward question. If 4.2 billion euros was allocated in our name, where is it? The coming days will likely bring forensic accounting reviews, legal clarifications, and perhaps counter-dossiers. Whistleblower claims, if genuine, will undergo verification. Institutional defenses will be mounted. The story is not finished. What happened in Strasbourg was not a verdict, it was an opening chapter, a document placed on a podium, a silence that spoke volumes, a walk away from a microphone still recording. Storms of this scale rarely dissipate quietly. Whether this becomes a contained dispute or a defining institutional crisis will depend on evidence, transparency, and the willingness of European institutions to confront scrutiny without defensiveness. 4.2 billion euros is not just a number. It represents public trust, shared resources, and the credibility of governance structures built over decades. If the funds were properly allocated and accounted for, documentation will show it. If not, accountability mechanisms exist precisely for moments like this. For now, one fact is undeniable. A routine budget debate transformed into a reckoning that could shape the trajectory of European politics. And the question remains, clear, simple, and unanswered. Where did 4.2 billion euros go?